Another English Quran study. Today we will be reading from Surah 5, verse 95. Inshallah. Let's seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Eûzu billahi mineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. 95. O you who believe, do not kill any game during pilgrimage. Anyone who kills any game on purpose, his fine shall be a number of livestock, animals, that is equivalent to the game animals he killed. The judgment shall be set by two equitable people among you. They shall make sure that the offerings reach the Kaaba. Otherwise, he may expite by feeding poor people or by an equivalent fast to atone for his offense. God has pardoned past offenses. But if anyone returns to such an offense, God will avenge it. God is Almighty Avenger. In the previous Quran study we were talking about the topic game conservation, which is the subtitle also from the 94. During the pilgrimage, God is warning us with His command that we should not kill any game, any wild animals, any game, because this is a rule from God, and maybe for our era it's hard to see wild animals near the Kaaba, but this is the rule from God, and while we don't know, God knows everything. And if someone offends, if someone returns this offense, God will avenge it. "96. The subtitle is All Creatures of the Sea Lawful to Eat. All fish of the sea are made lawful for you to eat. During pilgrimage, this may provide for you during your journey. You shall not hunt throughout the pilgrimage. You shall reverence God, before whom you will be summoned." I want to share from chapter 3 some verses, and then I want to make my comments about this topic, inshallah. I'll be reading chapter 3, verse 93. "Do not prohibit what is lawful. All food used to be lawful for the children of Israel until Israel imposed certain prohibitions on themselves before the Torah was sent down. Say, bring the Torah and read it if you are truthful. Those who fabricate false prohibitions after this and attribute them to God are truly wicked." Now, since we know prohibiting provisions that lawful is an idol worshipping, actually, and we can see in this time Judaism, Jewish people, how they are making some prohibitions, restrictions on their diet, and attributing these things to God. For example, they let me find that word. Okay, I said,
Constituents.
oh yeah, like the animals' nails. They were categorizing some animals with their nails, and this
Who's
the Jewish
huh?
people, yeah. Oh yeah, who's
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And this tradition actually, like the actually a lie, is you can see the reflection in Sunni Islam too, the same way. Interestingly, and we can see the trick of Satan in this topic. But thank God, God is warning us. Also with the subtitle too, actually, because subtitle says all creatures of the sea, uh, not just fish, right? So all fish of the sea are made lawful for us to eat, but we will be understanding this verse, God willing, all creatures of the sea lawful to eat, because there are many different creatures in the sea. And again, God is warning about hunting throughout the pilgrimages is not good for us. It's a commandment. I asked my one of my brother in masjid. He went 7-8 years ago Hajj, the pilgrimage, and I asked him if he sees any wild animals near Kaaba. He said, "No, God didn't. God didn't want me to see any deer, beautiful deer, so I can, like, he can get tested." So um, this is a test. 97. God has appointed the Kaaba, the sacred masjid, to be a sanctuary for the people, and also the sacred months, the offerings to the sacred masjid, and the garlands marking them. You should know that God knows everything in the heavens and the earth, and that God is omniscient. So, the shrine, there are many names for Kaaba in the Quran. Shrine, sacred masjid, Kaaba. Even in Arabic, I heard some information about that. In Arabic also, God is choosing another names for Kaaba. And Kaaba is the sacred masjid for submitters and believers who worship God alone. And it's a sanctuary for the people. And there are sacred months that God has appointed for us. There are 4 of them, and it's totally different than the the knowledge that so-called Muslim possess about the sacred months. So we have to just be careful when we wanted to do our Hajj pilgrimage. We have to be aware of this also trick of Satan. Satan let people choose different months as sacred months, but after Messenger of the Covenant, he pointed out that they're all wrong, and we should know that. Also, the verse is telling us we should know that God knows everything in the heavens and the earth, and that God is omniscient. MashaAllah, we will be talking his wisdom also in this Quran session in the next verses. Omniscient. 98. Know that God is strict in enforcing retribution, and that God is forgiving, most merciful. I think pretty straight, forgiving, most merciful, and also strict in enforcing retribution. For me, it's just being reverence to God comes with knowing the attributes of God. If someone I mean, it would not be fair if someone talk about only the good side of God, like perfectly most merciful, most kind. Yes, those are completely, absolutely correct. How about being strict in enforcing retribution? There is the other side of this attributes, and we have to be aware. 99. The sole duty of the messenger is to deliver the message, and God knows everything you declare and everything you conceal. So all the messenger in the history, every single one of them had the sole duty is to deliver the message. What was the message? We know, thank God, the message was same, not separated, not the other way around. All of them was straightforwardly saying one thing: worship God alone, and do not idolize anything else. And this was the sole duty of those people, and they are not dead because they were striving in the cause of God, so we cannot say they are dead. And other attributes that we are learning, remembering that, remembering of God. God knows everything you declare and everything you conceal. It's interesting. It's reminding me some childhood teachings from some hadiths that people were telling. If you don't know something, you just better to shut up or something like that. I don't remember, but I mean, being silent is not a thing that you can fool God. No one can fool God. God knows everything you declare and everything you conceal. After knowing something, actually, being silent also, after knowing the truth, and being silent is also dangerous for the person. It can be concealing. 100. Proclaim. The bad and the good are not the same, even if the abundance of the bad may impress you. You shall reverence God, even if you are in the minority, or you possess intelligence, that you may succeed. And for me, one of the fundamentals of this religion is feeling safe in the majority as a minority. This is a blessing from God. I believe that way because people resist to know the truth because they think that the truth belongs to majority, or truth has to come from a majority, right? They think that way, and no, Quran proves that this is a whole wrong concept. In this verse also, I will share now, God willing, another verses about this because it's kind of crucial. Chapter 2, verse 213. This verse is long verse and subtitled as disastrous jealousy, but we will hear some for general statements inside. 213. The people used to be one community when God sent the prophets as bearers of good news as well as warners. He sent down with them the scripture, bearing the truth to judge among the people in their disputes. Ironically, those who received the scripture were the ones who rejected any new scripture despite clear proofs given to them. This is due to jealousy on their part. God guides those who believe to the truth that is disputed by all others in accordance with His will. God guides whoever wills in a straight path. So here is the mechanism about the truth, how will be disputed by all the others, but that truth will be believed by believers accordance with His will, even though it looks like they are less in numbers, right? Doesn't matter. And the other verse I want to share from the same chapter, 204. It starts with a subtitle that says, appearances may be deceiving. Among the people, one may impress you with his utterances concerning this life, and may even call upon God to witness his innermost thoughts, while he is a most ardent opponent. Why I shared this verse is emphasizing that the bad and the good are not the same, even if the abundance of the bad may impress you, right? So the abundance, like the amount of the greater amount of the bad may impress us. But God says, one may impress you with his utterances concerning this life, and may even call upon God to witness his innermost thoughts, while he is a most ardent opponent. So bad as an idea, like as a perspective, the bad, after we distinguished from the good, this tend to be promotes itself in the society and impress us. This is how bad works. Next verse, 101. O you who believe, do not ask about matters which, if revealed to you prematurely, would hurt you. If you ask about them in light of the Quran, they will become obvious to you. God has deliberately overlooked them. God is forgiver, clement. Others before you have asked the same questions, then became disbelievers therein. As a human being, we are in rush to learn, grasp, experience, and even our eating. Like incredibly, we are in rush to everything. Wisdom too, most of the time. And I want to share my experience with you, brothers and sisters. In the beginning of accepting the submission as a religion of God, in the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, I was asking so many questions, so many, like requesting wisdom. Unfortunately, now I see totally wrong understanding, but I'll share this. It definitely hurt me a lot. I was not be aware of the problem, like because it caused conjecture first of all, because the information is not incompleted in my brain, but I was seeking more and more knowledge as if it's gonna helpful for me. And interestingly, God was giving the information, and I was like getting shock, and it was hurting me actually. Now I see, and I wanna warn maybe new submitters, if they are listening us, I wanna warn a crucial point as a comment for this verse. There are two things when you are reading Quran. One of them is gaining your wisdom. The other one is gaining your faith. And I would recommend prioritizing the faith instead of wisdom in the beginning, because it will not hurt you. The faith, I don't think faith can hurt you as long as it is through the God alone. After you learn the concepts of this religion, God willing, you will see how faith is giving contentment in your heart and your brain, and how it will make you in peace. But if you choose the wisdom part, which is you are not ready for it, it will hurt a lot. 102. Oh yeah, we read that part too. People were asking the same question before you have asked, then became disbelievers therein. I want to share another verse about this topic from chapter 21, verse 23. The subtitle says, "Never question God's wisdom." He is never to be asked about anything he does, while all others are questioned. Have they found other gods beside him? Say, "Show me your proof." This is the message to my generation, consummating all previous messages. Indeed, most of them do not recognize the truth. This is why they are so hostile. People might tell us, or their appearances with their words looks like they know something. They have knowledge about God, or they have many, such a big brain, such a nice mouth. But it's not working that way. Because their truth is not following Quran. And once you start asking them, show me the proof, what is the base of this ideology, show it, you will see them struggling, because they are not using Quran to check their point of views, That's the place that you can recognize them. If someone is talking, making points, many things about anything in life or even hereafter, if they are not using Quran, it's a conjecture. Those points, those perspectives are incomplete informations. And unfortunately, those are nonsense. Even though they might have, they might look really good, nice, well. So, next verse. 103. God did not prohibit livestock that begets certain combinations of males and females, nor livestock liberated by an oath, nor the one that begets two males in a row, nor the bull that fathers 10. It is the disbelievers who invented such lies about God. Most of them do not understand. So the same, not the same, but yeah, almost same things about livestock, about restrictions of people's religions diets. I will say people's religions because again and again there's no basis in this. They are just conjecturing about their restrictions. So it looks like they used to there were some people in the history they used to uh, prohibiting uh, uh, like making unlawful to eat some animals who has certain amount of babies in their bellies or whatever, like really really like nonsense. They were making up things. Look at this, the bull that fathers 10. So you cannot eat this because he has a 10 like, okay, they used to do that, and it's really bad for their souls. They did it. And look at the our current world, our current so-called religions, all of them. You will see many same mistakes. They are just insist in their own ways because they don't have basis. We had a footnote for the Kaaba, the sacred masjid. The idol worshipping Muslims have instituted 2 sacred masjids by consecrating the Prophet's tomb. The Quran talks only about 1 sacred masjid. Yes, unfortunately, so-called Muslims think that they're supposed to visit this tomb in order to be pured and get rid of their past sins by asking help from the some earth like soil or whatever, or the place shrine for them, the prophet's tomb. Yes, prophet's tomb. 104. The subtitles says, "Do not follow your parents' religion blindly. When they are told..." Just a second. Okay. When they are told, "Come to what God has revealed and to the messenger," they say, "What we found our parents doing is sufficient for us." What if their parents knew nothing and were not guided? I think in the Quran we will see 3 different places that God is warning us about our parents, which followed blindly. Let's read those 2 quickly and then we can make our comments. God willing. We will go chapter 37, verse 69. They followed their parents blindly. They found their parents astray, and they blindly followed in their footsteps. Most of the previous generations have strayed in the same manner. We have sent to them warners, not the consequences for those who have been warned. Only God's servants who are absolutely devoted to Him alone are saved. And I want to share another verses from chapter 18, verse 4 and 5. Because I want to share this because in Judaism, I already mentioned that how they are following their parents in their meat restrictions, right? Now I want to share how Christians, so-called Christians, let's say, because yeah, how they are choosing the Jesus as God or Son of God. From these verses, we will be understanding. Chapter 18, verse 4. And to warn those who said God has begotten a son. They possessed no knowledge about this, nor did their parents. What a blasphemy coming out of their mouths. What they utter is a gross lie. Interestingly, God is warning Christians actually here, so-called Christians, like do not follow what parents told you. Jesus is not Son of God. And let's read the verse 109 from chapter 11. Following our parents blindly, a great human tragedy. Do not have any doubt regarding what these people worship. They worship exactly as they found their parents worshiping. We will requite them their due share fully, without reduction. And I want to share the next verse too. We have given Moses the scripture, but it was disputed. And if it were not for a predetermined word decreed by your Lord, they would have been judged immediately. They are full of doubt about this, suspicious. Now we can see the Moses scripture also disputed by those people who were following their parents blindly. And I can see the same event happened in Sunni Islam, not Sunni Islam, but the so-called Islam, that they changed the Quran in history. And this way of thinking came from following the parents blindly and their religions. One of the crucial warnings in the Quran, and we have to be really careful because some people, I mean, they are against individualism. They are against to getting not enough love from family, or many ideas that they have. But every person, every individual have to be aware that love is coming from our families, a kind of coming with the hidden informations too that sometimes we cannot even see, and we have to be aware. 105. O you who believe, you should worry only about your own necks. If the others go astray, they cannot hurt you, as long as you are guided. To God is your ultimate destiny. All of you, then He will inform you of everything you had done. About our own necks, yes, mashallah, this is also great teachings. I used to be oblivious about this thing, like I was carrying some things on my back, about other people's destinies, as if I can do something about it, but it's completely wrong understanding. You cannot guide anyone, and you should not be worried about people. Besides, with that, I want to share some other verses in the Quran, and after the session, we might gonna talk about these things too, if you guys wish. Chapter 19, verse 5. Okay, let's start from the 2. Zechariah. A narration about your Lord's mercy towards his servant Zechariah. He called his Lord a secret call. He said, "My Lord, the bones have turned brittle in my body, and my hair is aflame with gray. As I implore you, my Lord, I never despair. I worry about my dependents after me, and my wife has been sterile. Grant me from you and hear. Let him be my heir and the heir of Jacob's clan, and make him my Lord acceptable." Zechariah using this phrase like, "I worry about my dependents after me, and my wife has been sterile. Grant me from you and here. And I think it's not the same thing for sure. He's not worrying about someone's neck, but I think he is kind of thinking about them more, right? And chapter 80, I want to share some verses from chapter 80, verse 33. Then, when the blow comes to pass, that is the day when one flees from his brother, from his mother and father, from his spouse and children. Each one of them on that day worries about his own destiny. This is the day of judgment. This is the scene from the day of judgment, and God tells us each one of them on that day worries about his own destiny. It's better to remind these verses too, because our own neck is much important than others. And God will inform us of everything we had done, right? And our vision will be sharp, like a steel. Once we see the truth, when our soul is hurting with an angel, we will make sure about our all things that we did. 106. The subtitle says, "Witnessing a Will." O you who believe, witnessing a will when one of you is dying shall be done by two equitable people among you. If you are traveling, then two others may do the witnessing. After observing the contact prayer salat, let the witnesses swear by God. To alleviate your doubts, we will not use this to attain personal gains, even if the testator is related to us, nor will we conceal God's testimony. Otherwise, we would be sinners. If the witnesses are found to be guilty of bias, then two others shall be asked to take their places. Choose two persons who were victimized by the first witnesses, and let them swear by God. Our testimony is more truthful than theirs. We will not be biased. Otherwise, we will be transgressors. This is more apt to encourage an honest testimony on their part, fearing that their oath may be disregarded like that of the previous witnesses. You shall observe God and listen. God does not guide the wicked. Inshallah, I'll be stop here after making short comments about witnessing a will. What I understand from these three verses is very, very detailed, and how to act during a person who is dying in front of me, I guess. That's what I understand. And I'm right there as a witness about his will. So I'm receiving his will, he's telling me something, or she is telling me something. And then I have to be really careful about this information that I just heard and witnessed. And I should do some certain things. This is God's commandments, right? I should be really aware of these commandments if I receive this information. And God's testimony, uh, I cannot conceal God's testimony because whoever does this will be sinner. I cannot use this information that the test the guy who's telling me the things that as a personal gains, to attain personal gains, and being righteous technically. And thank you so much for listening. God bless you all. I will stop here. If you have any comments or questions, please share with us.
MashaAllah, brother. Thank you.
MashaAllah, thank you very much.
MashaAllah, brother. God
MashaAllah, God bless you.
MashaAllah, brother.
I have a slow question with 997. I don't know too much of the Arabs, but in the time of when they, like in 997, it says the Arabs are the worst in disbelief and hypocrisy, and the most likely to ignore the laws that God has revealed to His messenger. My question is, do we think that the Arabs even this is what God said? I'm wondering, did this like expire? Are they no longer the worst? Is it someone else, or like during the time when this was being read off, at a certain point, like at a certain point in time, the Arabs were worse in disbelief, or is another group of individuals worse in disbelief today?
It's the second one.
You say
worse.
so.
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
Yeah, the last one. Yeah, there's still, and there's also Submer's perspective where he describes that in detail, and he describes even like the borders of the regions that include that.
And mashallah, my understanding is that when we say the Arabs, it doesn't mean the people who speak Arabic. It means, in that perspective that Brother Suleiman mentioned, he actually mentions which countries are included. It's the Arabian Peninsula, and he actually mentions the borders of that. So it's not that all the Arabic-speaking people. No, it's just people in that region. Mashallah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I couldn't just say all Arabian people. Well, obviously I can't say all Arabian people because in 99 it says other Arabs do believe, but just considering, Arabs to a certain extent, I couldn't completely say all Arabian people.
Yeah, it's the perspective of 1986, November 1986. So if you want to learn more about it, you can read that article, and it talks about it in detail. God willing, I'll share the link with you.
Yeah, inshallah, please.
God says in the middle of the verse, and the garlands marking them. This is a new word for me. I just checked, translate, and see the definition. What do you guys understand from the garlands marking them?
Selami, please say again so I can find that verse.
Let me read it again. God has appointed the Kaaba, the sacred masjid, to be a sanctuary for the people, and also the sacred months, the offerings to the sacred masjid, and the garlands marking them. You should know that God knows everything in the heavens and the earth, and that God is omniscient.
Actually, we were.
Yeah, go.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Shema. You were first.
Mashallah, thank you. So, subhanAllah, today we were discussing this with Masood. We actually came across another verse that has the word garlands in that. And my understanding is that it's just my opinion that it has to do with when people, send their sacrifices, like it showed that this belongs to a certain people. Like it was a mark, and like something that they, like a decoration they put on the animal to show that it belonged to a person, that it is actually a sacrifice made by that person, some sort of a tag. I don't know, that's my understanding. If you have other comments, please share.
Could it be designated because back in the day, they didn't have cars and vehicles and stuff like that, so livestock was very much part of the transportation, and a lot of people were actually dealing with livestock. So maybe to mark the differentiation between just regular livestock walking around and ones dedicated to sacrifice, they put garlands on.
You mean like license plates?
Speculation. Yeah, yeah, the license plates for the livestock. Yeah.
Alaikum. Yes, I agree. I mean, like, my understanding is also the same. I had this conversation with others as well because well, you know, it's important. But when you want to send a sacrifice, do you need to put like a garland around their neck or not? But what I understood from that conversation was that garland, putting garland that marks them is a kind of like so like a chain or whatever that they put around these, as you said, French Justin, so that you would know that these are the ones for sacrifice. So you know, mark these. So this is for this. This is for this person. This is for that person, and then they take them for sacrifice. So it's not that you put like a garland of flowers around their neck. It would be like something to mark them, like a chain or something that you put around them to mark them. That's what my understanding was. Because I mean, even at this time, you can't do that. Technically, it's not even possible. You just don't even see it unless like you've got some connections with some locals that they will take you to the slaughterhouse. Nowadays, don't you can't even do it. So my understanding of that conversation was that it would be something that they put around their neck so that they would know that these are the animals for sacrifice. And that's it.
Um, right. So I actually posted the link in chat for the perspective that I was talking about regarding the Arabs. And then also, if you do a Google search for like, I put like eat animals for sacrifice, and you will see a bunch of pictures. I mean, I didn't put anything about garlands or anything, you know, I just put like eat animals for sacrifice just to see. And you can see, like, you know, they put a lot of things around these animals that they sacrifice, especially for Eid. Like they put literally put like decorations and stuff like around cows, and they mark them with different colors and stuff, you know. So
Is that some sort of like event that they do yearly?
event that they do yearly.
Yeah, if they're doing it, is it like I'm wondering, are they still doing it today? So,
Yeah, yeah, they're people still do it. Like, um, it's it may not be like everybody doing it, but a lot of people. Yeah,
mm,
yeah. Let me share some of these images. Pretty colorful.
how colorful are we talking? Are we
I mean, like they paint them and stuff, you know.
okay? So yeah, it's very colorful.
Yeah,
Okay, so they do this before they sacrifice the animal.
yeah.
Wow.
Usually it's like the people who are even like selling them and stuff. Even they mark them like this, you know, that they, you know, decorate them this way. Yeah. I mean, we're not really experts, but and it's not, but yeah, yeah. But you can see like all the slaughter animals, like they put all these kinds of fancy decorations around them to make them attractive. Also, I guess for selling.
Okay, now I kind of forgot why we brought this up, but I'm wondering, is this a direct rejection to what God has said to us in the Quran, or are they like I kind of forgot why we brought this up, but
We
did they
brought
do
this
this
up
out of
because someone
rejecting
asked the
God?
question, "What are garlands?"
What are garlands?
Yeah, because yeah, there's a verse where it is mentioned. Yes.
Gar-
Yeah, so going back to this topic about the animals, I mean, it's not animals, sorry, the Arabs, same
Hmm.
thing. So, so yeah, a little bit of sarcasm there. So, going back to the idea about the Arabs, sorry, this perspective is really interesting, because it talks about how not a single Arab you will find who actually is a believer. And from time to time, you may come across people that may be from these areas, but then you will know that they're not really, really, I mean, they're not actually from that area. Like they may have parents who may have immigrated from, some other countries and settled there, and their children. But the Arabs, the people that God is talking about, most of them, most of these people are from the Arabian Peninsula. So I believe I'm looking for the part that I think there's maybe another perspective also that talks about this, but because I'm not finding the geographical part in this one, but it talks about how you can see a single Arab who is a submitter, and it's interesting because I mean it's true to this day. Like you don't come across people, like I know like just one person who was, and I was like questioning. Well, one person, and he became he reverted to traditional Islam or something, and then
You were questioning him on the religion.
no, I wasn't questioning him. I mean I was just questioning it, like how come, like he's a submitter, and how come, like messengers talking about this, and I was just questioning in my mind. But then it turns out that he later on denounced submission and went back to his parents' religion. And some other people also I came across from time to time just turned out to be like hypocrites.
Do you think he was probably the worst? Do you think he was the worst of the worst, or he was like mild or something?
What?
Do you think he was? He's an Arab, right?
Yeah, so I mean, God is saying the Arabs are the worst in hypocrisy, right? As a nation, you know, they're the worst in hypocrisy, right? I mean, you see them using the Quran, especially to show their belief in God, and you think that these are the vanguards of Islam, but these are the worst enemies of submission. So in that respect, doesn't necessarily mean that every one of them is the worst, but I mean, a hypocrite is a hypocrite. A hypocrite in itself is the worst. Now if you want to find the worst hypocrite, I mean, it's hard to rank for me to rank people, but I mean, being a hypocrite in itself, I mean, you're in the worst place. You go to the lowest pit of hell, right? So,
Right.
mhm.
Okay. Okay. So in 99 it says other Arabs do believe in God in the last day and consider their spending to be a means towards God and a means of supporting the message. Indeed, it will bring them nearer. God will admit them into His mercy. So, wow.
Yeah, maybe I think I will read the article so it might be clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inshallah.
So, and maybe I mean, we don't, we only know what we know, right? So, I mean, we can't dissect it further. So, okay, so Arabs forbidden from seeing the miracle of the Quran. So it says Arabs dismissed from God's grace headline, incurring the ultimate curse. Surah Muhammad, verse 38, 19 times 2. Door subtitled Door of Repentance closed on Arabs. And it says Arabs forbidden from seeing the miracle of the Quran of their uh, because of their unappreciative disregard of God's message to them. The last 10 years of the 14th Islamic century witnessed the great oil bonanza for the Arabs. This appears to mark the beginning of the end for them. Verse 44 through 46 of Surah 6 teach us, uh, uh, verses 44 through 46 of Surah 6 teach us that along with the oil bonanza, God has taken away the Arabs' ability to hear, see, or understand. The evidence is overwhelming that the Arabs' ability to comprehend God's signs has been taken away. Seemingly intelligent Arabs who would talk to you about this world's sciences and philosophies suddenly turn utterly dumb when it comes to the Quran and its irrefutable mathematical miracle. Verse 44 of Surah 6 states, because they disregarded the message given to them, we open for them the gates of everything. Then, just as they rejoiced in the material things given to them, we seized them suddenly, and they became utterly stunned. Verse 46 then informs us that God takes away their hearing, their eyesight, and their minds. Of course, this curse refers to anything or everything having to do with God. They can no longer see, uh, they can no longer hear, see, or understand God's message. The top religious, then it says, here is the evidence. The top religious scholars of the Arab world held a meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to look at the Quran's mathematical miracle. Under the leadership of Saudi Arabia's Grand Mufti Abdul Aziz bin Baz, the official title of bin Baz is President of the Department of Scientific Research and Rules of Dawah and Guidance. See Arabic inlay from his official stationery. Bin Baz, by the way, is the notorious scholar who still believes that the earth is flat. See the New York Times, December 14th, 1984. The top Arab scholars published their findings throughout the world, including their English publication, Impact International, 21 August 1986, page 3. Judging from this report, it is obvious that these leading Arab scholars are hopelessly stuck on the very first item of God's undeniable mathematical miracle, as shown in the photocopy from Impact. They decided that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is the first verse of the Quran, contains neither just 19 letters nor 4 words. Now, they're not even trying to remove the Bismillah from the Quran. Now they're even trying to remove the Bismillah from the Quran altogether. Apparently, the idiots think that if Bismillah is removed, the whole miracle will collapse. This is the first proof that they are utterly forbidden from seeing the miracle. In my translation of the Quran, footnote 1.1 stated that Bismillah is, quote, the foundation upon which a great miracle is built, unquote. The great Arab scholars figured that if they destroy the quote-unquote foundation, then the whole structure will
Wow.
come down. It's like a building. Um, and first the committee, okay. So it says, first the committee thanked Dr. Khalifa for what appeared to be interest in supporting the miraculous nature of the Quran by making use of modern technology and pointing out to new factors which have, it's hard to read because the print is not clear, has been unknown to Muslims. Afterwards, it went on to record the Arabic translation of this booklet and lectures and put forward its findings and recommendations. Basically, the learned doctor has founded his theory on number 19 and its multiple. According to him, the first Quranic verse, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or Bismillah, meaning the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, consists of 19 Arabic letters. From linguistic point of view, it is clear that Al-Bismillah contains neither just 19 letters nor 4 words. Besides, it is not the first Quranic verse as Dr. Khalifa has claimed. In fact, there is no unanimous agreement among the Quranic scholars as to consider whether Al Bismillah is the part of the first surah and of the subsequent surahs, or whether it is an independent verse by which we start reciting the Quran, or whether it is meant as an indicator of the end of the surah and the beginning of a new one. All these aspects are discussed extensively. Once there is no consensus achieved on all these points, except Surah 27, Al-Nama, where Al-Bismillah mentioned in verse 30 is a part of it, a solid foundation cannot thus be laid down for a theory which claims the miraculous nature of Quran. This means that many points claim to rest upon the figure 19, and hence the whole theory will crumble. Doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and it goes on. So then it says, yeah, I mean, it's long.
Okay. Let me let me read
Yeah,
it
you can
because
read,
I'm interested
yeah.
too. A terrible
But there was
dilemma.
another one.
Yeah,
I was actually thinking of another one that actually talks about
and it's
the
still similar
region.
to the Arabs.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was talking about the region of Saudi Arabia. I mean, the region of Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula. I'll mention that. I just shared the link. Karung, I will not read that.
I suppose that's probably longer too.
Yeah, I mean that one is not that long, but I guess I mean it already took a lot of time. So,
MashaAllah, and thank you, brother. And also, brother Khalid, you mentioned the verse that says some Arabs actually believe. I always thought of that verse as at the time of Prophet Muhammad, or before the 1400 years that the Arabs were given time, because there's another verse that says, "We have given you, O Muhammad, like the seven purse." That seven purse. One of the meanings is that the Arabs, the nation, were given like 1400 years to believe, but they rejected and they believed the Hadith and Sunnah, so their time is over. And that's signals, that makes me real understand or think that the Arabs before that they had a chance to believe, and there were believers among them, but after the 1400 years, the time is over for them. And we know it's based on the justice of God. The souls that are being assigned to the bodies in that region are not supposed to end up in
I
heaven.
actually like that point a lot.
Yeah.
The souls assigned to those bodies,
Yes.
because I'm thinking for this to work, every Arab that comes out of another Arab has
Mhm.
to be worse, like has to worse in disbelief and hypocrisy, and most likely to ignore the law. So like that point kind of points to like that making sense.
Yes,
mhm.
Wow. Yeah, that's like above my pay grade, right? Because it's that's something to really consider.
Couldn't it be more of a comment based on just cultural differences? I think many people would agree, especially people who come from out of traditional Islam or traditional Sunni or Shiite. Yeah, people who get exposed to the revelation of the Quran recognize that most of what is considered Islam is now just culture. It is not actually religion based; it is cultural based. So, could it be more of a comment based on the culture?
Um, no, I mean it's not talking about culture. It's actually very much about even about like the people. Now God, the thing is, God assigns the souls to the people in a country based on his knowledge of the Arabs. Like for example, he knows like which souls are bad and which souls have no hope, and he sends them to these locations because you would think like, well, it's not somebody's fault they're born in Saudi Arabia to Arabian people, right? But God knows these souls prior to sending them. He has full knowledge, so he knows which souls deserve to go to these families. I found that perspective, the one that I actually wanted to refer to, that is from April 1985. And it says, I am tempted to read it, but it says, "Has God forsaken the Arabs?" But it's very interesting, and you can read it yourself. And it actually answers that very question you're asking. Um, and it says, I'm just going to read maybe just this one part. It says, "The miracle was understood and appreciated by Americans, Canadians, Egyptians, Malaysians, British, Iranians, Turks, Australians, Africans, Europeans, Indonesians, Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and many other nationalities, but not a single Arab. Why? Has God forsaken the Arabs?" Um, so then it goes on further into this, and then it says again, "Muslims of all races, nationalities, educational levels, and professions have enthusiastically supported the miracle. The only exception has been the Arabs. One of the strangest phenomena I have ever witnessed is the fact that not a single Arab was permitted to understand or appreciate the miracle of the Quran. Not only were the Arabs prevented from by God from understanding the Quran's mathematical miracle, they are the only people in the world who are fighting it. Yes, and then he's putting caps, fighting it. They allocated budgets and spent a lot of money to fight God in His miracle. In the process, they have committed some of the weirdest blasphemies I've ever seen. And then he lists them. And and then where's the part? Then it again talks about all these nationalities except but not one single Arab. And then he mentions the verse that God has mentioned in the Quran about the Arabs. And then I still don't see the part that talks about the boundaries here in page 3. It's a really long one too. Yeah, anyways, it's in one of these two articles. But yeah, I mean, it's really just the Arabs, you know?
So
It's
does this also include the American-born Arabs or European-born Arabs? Because we still don't see any submission. So this could also be their children too.
yeah, so I mean, like, it's not about based on which country you're born, because, you know, like, he's talking about people who are in Saudi Arabia, but then, or born in Saudi Arabia, but he finds out that their parents were from, like, Egypt or something, right? And then, so, like, oh yeah, so it's the, it's the Egyptian heritage or whatever, you know. So in the same way, I mean, an Arab can move to America and give birth to a child, but the child still, it doesn't change. He's still an Arab, right? And I mean, if his parents are Arabs and he's an Arab, I mean, it doesn't matter. He's born in America, you know. So it's more like a race type of thing than a nationality, you know.
Well, I think because when I had read 97, I was thinking, oh, because God is saying the Arabs are worse in disbelief and hypocrisy, that I was thinking that meant hell. But when I read the verses, it definitely like destroys that thought. I think so because, like some of the Arabs do believe in the last day, and consider their spinning to be a means towards God and a means of supporting the messenger. And God says, indeed, it will bring them near. God will admit them into His mercy. So like that pretty much destroyed that thought. That's why I kind of went heavy in onto this because I was thinking God was saying all Arabs are bound to go to hell, but that's not what is being said here.
Yeah. So I mean, if you think about it from this perspective, right? Muhammad was an Arab, right? So when God is saying other Arabs do consider their spending in the cause of God, so God gave them, and then God says He gave them the evidence, He gave them the proofs. and then they chose to disregard it, and then God has sealed their minds now. So so I think from that perspective, when the messenger says you don't find a single Arab, and that's why I was reading it, because if you read these articles, I mean, he is saying not a single person, So like there should be, we're then we're saying, okay, if there are exceptions right now, there should be people, right, that are exceptions, but you don't see them. Where are they? They're not to be found, you know. Like I knew a few, but like there was one person, she was from Iraq, and there was another guy, but like they went on to believe in circumcision. So like we have nobody in our group, for example, right? So likewise, we don't see anybody really from any of these places from the time of the messenger till now, right? So what does that show us? That these people have been dismissed. But I mean, read the article. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you can ask questions and discuss here, but if you really want to, learn more about it, just take the time and go through these articles. God will, I share this one also in the chat, God willing. Yeah, he's talking about, like, he's saying not a single Arab. So, and I mean, he's putting that in caps and underlining, and maybe I'm not even emphasizing on it as much, as he is.
I remember once a so-called submitter contacted us, and he said like the messenger was racist. He said, "Thank God I'm not an Arab." And it was like we said, "Okay, what do you mean by that?" Because it's what God is saying. Like the Arabs, the
Mm-hmm.
word hypocrisy is not His saying. And
Mm-hmm.
it was so interesting that he said, "I love the messenger. I believe in the messenger," but he was racist. It was so. May God forgive us.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if Abraham made like any mistakes that are recorded in the Quran?
Yeah, so we know that he prayed for forgiveness for his parents, his father, who was an idol worshiper.
Okay, that's one of them.
Yeah.
I'm reading 9:1:15. It says, God does not send any people astray after he had guided them, without first pointing out for them what to expect. God is fully aware of all things. I think my question here is the things that God is pointing out for us. It's in the Quran. That's what we are to expect. But I was also thinking like the how God can inspire you through three ways, with it being the messenger, um, behind a barrier, and then there was one more. Inspiration, right? I think it was through inspiration, and I pretty much was. Does anyone know if it's inspiration? The third one, from a messenger, from behind a barrier, and then inspiration. I think.
Yeah. Are we still talking about the verses that we read today, or is this off topic?
No, this is 9:115. This is still the verse.
We didn't read 9:115. We're in Surah 5.
Say again. I'm sorry.
We're in Surah 5, 9, not 9.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Bro, you in the future, you time traveled.
On YouTube it says 9, so
Yeah,
probably you need to change that.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was. That's why I thought it was 9, because it says 995. Well, never mind. I think you guys get that point.
So, yeah, I just want to make a comment. Actually, very important verses that we read today, mashallah, especially about the idea of prohibition, I mean, I mean, these people are attributing lies to God when they prohibit things. And the messenger of the covenant actually has some of these recently discovered Quranic study audios. He's discussing how this has impacted people. Like God says in the Quran that prohibiting lawful things brings deprivation. And he talks about the third world countries, including countries like Pakistan. And he says how they have prohibited so many things uh, on themselves that are not prohibited by God. And because of that, God has turned them into the poorest countries, just because of that alone. So it's very important that people don't prohibit things that are made lawful by God. I mean, if you do that, it's a sign of unappreciation, and obviously you're attributing lies to God, and it makes. I mean, no one wants to be in that position on the day of judgment.
Yeah, it was like with I was with the individual. I was selling a pair of glasses to someone, and he was saying he said he was Muslim, and he was saying something about gold being haram. Yeah. And I told my parent, and my parent pretty much pointed out to me that this guy was pretty much prohibiting something that's lawful and good. Now, 88 is talking about eating and stuff, but people will even go to the extent of striving to say that gold is is prohibited, which is just crazy.
Yeah, they don't.
But
By the way, I mean,
sorry.
they don't say gold is prohibited. They just say gold to wear gold for a man is prohibited.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you see like the Arabs, I mean, they can't get enough of gold. I mean, they stuff gold in their cars and homes and everything, and in their bathrooms and you name it. I mean, so we read verse 5105, right? And I think it's really one of those verses that we see is twisted and abused by people. that refers to not judging other people. And the verse says, "O you who believe, O you who believe, you should worry only about your own necks. If the others go astray, they cannot hurt you as long as you are guided. To God is your ultimate destiny, all of you. Then He will inform you of everything you had done." So, like, the moment like it comes to discussion of hypocrites, or judging someone based on hypocrisy, people will talk about this verse, to say that you don't worry about it, like everything, like don't judge them, don't do anything, and just let everything be, because God says just worry about yourself. Yeah, I mean that's true. Worry about yourself, but then also, um, it is for the worry of yourself that you're supposed to make that judgment call, because God says they can affect you, right? And you have to answer for yourself. And God says you don't have to. God says you shouldn't befriend them and all this, and you shouldn't marry an idol worshiper and all these things. That's all about yourself, you know. So ultimately, everything we do, all our actions are about ourselves, But that doesn't mean that we shut all our senses, and just think that y- I don't have to make any types of judgments. Of course, if you want to survive, and if you are really serious about your soul, and if you really are concerned about it, you have to definitely do all of that, right? So worrying about your soul doesn't mean that you don't care if the person next to you is a hypocrite or not. If the person next to you is a hypocrite, I mean, you better run for your life, right? Not befriend that person. That is worrying about yourself. If you don't worry about yourself, I mean, and this is what's going to happen. And I think I saw this really funny video today, where it was talk. I mean, the message of the video was kind of different, but like it was a video about a cat, and they were showing this cat that was watching TV at first, and she was watching a boxing match between two people, and one of the players, he kept turning his, and he kept like bending his neck left and right, so like a pendulum, left and right, as he's dodging uh, the other person's attacks. So he's constantly doing it, and then at the end they show the same cat wrestling with another cat, and they're like, same thing, like how cats will do also, like they box with each other, and they see that cat fighting with the other cat, and the cat is doing the same thing, just constantly moving her head around, it affects her. That's what she learned from watching those fighters, so like the idea is that if you're around another person, whatever they're about. I mean, if you hang around with them more and more, I mean, you're just gonna end up becoming like them without even realizing it. So they'll infect you. They'll promote doubts and ideas. So yeah, if you worry about it, you need to be careful about all these things.
So you're saying people like really take this verse out of context.
Of course, yeah.
Mashallah, brother. Yeah, even I heard today, I was listening to the Quran, or um, at the end of Surah 29, it said God will, I think it's one of the last verses, or close to, but it said God
Hmm.
will most certainly expose the hypocrites. So
Hmm.
that tells us right there that, just as Brother Suleiman was saying, we need to,
Hmm.
can't fall into the trap of doing this, not, don't judge and all that. And I hear that all the time, especially from other Christians. And
Hmm.
then speaking of, there's actually this maybe this Christian hypocrite that I've known for a while, and just some stuff went down about a month ago or a few weeks ago, and I've been glad to hear this, because it just some confirmation, and it's tricky because you can even have, not just like your typical hypocrites that were, around the messenger or got the message of submission or Islam. You can have Christian hypocrites that, constantly promote like blasphemous stuff. I mean, they'll sing something stupid like this ISIS person found Jesus in prison, and it's like, what do
Jesus
you?
was in prison.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like this. I mean, who knows how terrible this ISIS person, was, and then I don't know, maybe it's a curse on him, but I mean, it's just he's just trading, I guess, one form of idolatry for the other. But I
Mhm.
only watched part of the video, but yeah, he found Jesus when he was in prison, and like now he's so good now, he's so great, he's worshiping Jesus now. So, but I mean, just if someone I feel like, it's. I mean, as we talked before, I've kind of given them the message, and I don't think there's any hope really. Um, just because like there's someone else too. It's night and day difference. There's a neighbor of mine that I've recently been. He was in the army, but he was like showing just a high level of interest. He was, talked to him a week ago, and it's I even gave him one of the Quran. I give from Barnes and Noble. Um, the authorized ones, and he was like so happy, and he was asking questions, and he even called me today. And so it's kind of like there's a huge I guess, with the other person. What I'm trying to say is I got maybe tricked into like false hope, or telling
Mhm.
myself, and then finally it's like when you see somebody else like the guy who, you know, former guy in the army. He went overseas and he met these Arabs, but like he telling them about submission, and really some of the stuff we talked about today. He's like so happy, and he's like,
Mhm.
God willing, he's. I showed him a video of the messenger. He even sent me a picture. He was watching the King of Chaos. Like that's and he
Mhm. So.
so that's like, I guess, a night and day difference between a hypocrite Christian and or a
Mhm.
hypocrite, someone who actually wants to help themselves.
Mhm.
Wait, John, did you say this guy has hope or he doesn't?
No, so the original guy I was talking, I've known him for a long time, and he's the one who would send like blasphemous stuff about just like the ISIS and prisoner finding Jesus, and all this stuff. And I've given him the
Yeah.
message for a while, and he's I mean, he's the same guy. I think back in February there was a study. I mentioned him. He apologized for it though, but he would make crack jokes at not eating pork. And I mean, I came back at him and I said, dude, you're the clown for eating a meat that's infected with trematodes and parasites. I mean,
Oh
I
man.
see videos. I mean, this stuff. And it's only found in pigs too. They have parasites that'll go to your brain, but um, long story short, I mean, he later apologized and he acted like he was interested, but I just feel like it was all just this pseudo interest. It was all fake, you know.
Mhm.
Eating my neighbor, it's like, man, that's someone who actually deserves, I gave him a copy of the Quran. I was actually thinking about giving a copy to the other guy, Christian hypocrite, multiple times, but something just stopped me. One time I forgot it at my house, and then this guy it was kind of awesome how it
Oh,
worked out.
wow. So you could pretty much tell that the Christian hypocrite you call, you could distinguish that he was not willing to listen, and your neighbor is actually open and willing to listen.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing like the someone who is, and then once you get like got a better, I guess, relative comparison, then I'm able to see things better. Instead of having this false hope. Like I've had before for him. But and I think I talked to Brother Suleiman about it too. But the evidence against this person. I mean, it's just I don't see any hope. I mean, they're stuck in their idol worship, and the thing I know, what tells me is like I mean, whoever it is, they're like really arrogant, like they're not willing to maybe open up and say, oh, maybe I was taught all this stuff wrong, from my parents, and their arrogance shows. And it's just like that verse I was thinking about when I heard it. I was thinking about this situation. It says, I think it's in Surah 6, maybe, but it says they um, people who um, sorry, I'm paraphrasing, but it says those who say what they don't know about God only expose the arrogance hidden inside their chest. And that's what I've noticed. And I was also very careful in making a decision to I've known this person for a while. And
Right. John,
uh,
as you speak, bro, it just makes me like think back to Solomon's point. Alhamdulillah, like how this just as you're speaking, all you're talking about is you making decision to move your piece here or move your piece there because you know it has consequences. And it almost made me teary-eyed to think about that because like sometimes when I hear you talk, you'll talk, but sometimes like I wouldn't decipher everything you're saying, but now when that point comes to light and is on surface, I can actually see how important it is to like move your piece carefully, like just as you're telling like your stories, bro. I think it's actually I appreciate you telling your story, bro. Thank you.
not sure. Thank
Yeah, yeah, mashallah. That's just a really important point to take home.
And mashallah, also, I think that verse 110 is, pretty detailed and very significant about Jesus and what he did, and how many times, God says, "You did this by my leave, did this by my leave. You healed the lepers by my leave. You blew into the bird and it became live by my leave." All these things and everything he did by God's leave. And these people turn him to a god. But it's interesting that how all these things, as far as God is concerned, have already happened. So these are the statements. This is the dialogue, the exchange that's going to take place between God and Jesus on the day of judgment. But you know, God has already witnessed it and is describing to us as if it has already happened. Which I think is fascinating, and and even in that dialogue, he is talking about referencing things from the past that obviously he did, which are, so it's that kind of like, I mean, if you try to visualize it, it's kind of like reminds you of like the movie Inception, which is like the thing within the thing, so
you.
yeah.
I'll look that movie up.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I never understood that movie, but it was still fascinating.
Yeah, mashallah. It was real interesting. I didn't understand it either.
Hmm.
It was
Oh,
full of
I remember this
aspects.
movie. Yeah, it's decent. Yeah, it's pretty decent.
Something else I want to say. So maybe I don't know what to refer to him as. Maybe a possible new submitter. He's when I told him about God alone, how the Mohammedans worship Muhammad and the Christians worship Jesus. He just like he got, and I said, worship. Explain to him about monotheism, and he was like, it was genuine, very genuine too. I mean, he was just all over the place. He was like, man, I always felt that way. It was like it makes sense that there's only one, and he just is very sincere about it too. So that goes to show it's. I mean, he grew up Christian too. And he was even asking stuff like, really kind too. He was asking stuff, I'd say, praise be to God, or sorry, excuse me, or God willing, and he was like, oh, do I need to respond with something like that? Because back at the church he grew up in, if somebody says that, there was a thing where you had to say amen, after, and I told him, I was like, no, no, I said, you're, yeah.
So, mashallah, I mean, I want. So, actually, yesterday was Masood's birthday. I don't know if he's listening, but I wanted to request Al Fatiha for him.
I'm listening, brother.
Oh, you're listening, mashallah. Yeah.
Mashallah.
So, request Al Fatiha for him,
Mashallah.
and also one for John. He's planning to move here, so may God make it easy for him, and also for Brother Masood that he has a wonderful year, inshallah. So let's recite Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Malik Yawm Al-Din. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Oh
Thank
wow.
you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have special effects there.
Confetti popping and
MashaAllah.
yeah, mashallah. How old did you turn, brother?
35 finished in 36. I still have four more years until 40.
Oh man.
Mashallah.
If you want to go to lower heaven, let us know.
Oh, that's good.
So brother, you have still enough time to whatever you can, you
No,
can enjoy.
brother, we now know there's nothing that we can do. Mashallah. Yes. I mean, one of the things which is very important is that when you cannot say that you don't know. This is one of the most beautiful things about submission or any thought, for that matter. I mean, when you know, then that's it, right? That's why God says that if you revert, and if you turn back on your heels, meaning that if you just go back on what you believe, and then that's it, right? There are many people, unfortunately, you see that when you look at the literature of submission, you see that there were many people who did lots of things for submission, but then they went far astray, unfortunately. So inshallah, we should ask God to actually hold us and help us stay on this path, inshallah.
Yes,
Yes,
mashallah.
mashallah. Yeah, this is the things, you cannot abuse the God's, system. Even if you have 40 years, we cannot see, after because I know the truth now, so I cannot fool myself, God, I cannot fool the God to God. Because I have still a few years, to be a submitter, and I can do whatever I do. Then after 40 years, I can be a submitter.
Oh
No,
no.
yeah, it will be
No,
not
no.
easy that time. Yeah. So
Well, I mean, the thing is, the whole thing doesn't even make any sense because even if you, being under 40 doesn't mean that whatever you do, it's gonna be just forgiven in itself, right? It only means that if you die before this time, before 40, you'll be
mhm,
forgiven, right? But if you die at 41,
mhm, yeah,
which is not in your control, right? If you die at 41, everything you did counts. Just
yes, yeah.
because you were less than 40 doesn't mean that the cheating and the lying or whatever people are doing under
Mhm,
40 is going to be wiped off, right? That's not what it means,
mhm,
right? So every moment that you have, every day that you have, whether under 40 or over 40, is very important, and
mhm,
all the credits we can get, so like I know this, yeah, but I know this idea that some people think that if that means that if I'm under 40 I can do whatever I want. No,
mhm,
that's not what it means. It means you can do whatever you want, and if you die but if you die before 40, then you will go to lower heaven, right?
Mhm.
But if you don't die before 40, I mean, everything that you're doing is counting.
Yeah.
It's all being counted for. So,
Yeah. So I have some people, so who, I say some people they are submitter, but they are hardcore of like the believer of, like, say, belief in circumcision. So some people are saying, oh, they are not still 40, so maybe before 40, maybe they yeah, they'll purify themselves. So what about those submitter? Because they said they are submitter, but they are hard believer of like belief of like
so if they're hypocrites before 40,
yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah.
Okay, so if I could, I just wanted to understand the point on circumcision. I just wanted to understand what was wrong about it.
So, our brother Suleiman can probably explain it better, but it's a false covenant. It's not in the Quran. That was the biggest, easiest thing for me. Is just that it's not in the Quran. That's how I came to and then brother Suleiman has a lot of good information.
Okay, inshallah.
Yeah, Brother Khalis, you can. There are many videos that actually Brother Suleiman has created as like Friday sermons for Friday prayer. I think there are 6 or 7 ones on God Alone TV. You can watch all of them and then you can come to your own conclusion, brother. I think, yeah, there are many reasonings to it why it is not part of the religion, why it is a satanic practice, and why it is so much emphasized upon in among Jews and among traditional Muslims and even some submitters. Why they do that, if you just you have to see the whole idea first of all, and then see all the reasonings for it, and then come to your own conclusions, brother.
Yeah, yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say a little bit, and like it's not in the Quran, and the main point is it's not is against the attributes of God. If circumcision, if you see the circumcision, how they are doing for the children or young boy, or so it's against the attributes of God, the main thing, and this is not from the Quran. And there are so many other issues, so you have to research on it and you have to study it, so you have to come in conclusion, so you believe it or we cannot force, or you have to judge your you have to study and you have to get your own judgment, inshallah God will help you, inshallah.
Inshallah. And there is one more point, and that is, attributing a lie to God, which is one of the worst crimes that anybody could commit. And it has roots in Judaism and in, Old Testament, where you read it and you see that it has been tampered with in Torah, that the Jews have attributed it to Prophet Abraham, and has said that God has ordered, Nauzubillah, we have to seek refuge in God from Satan, that God has ordered Abraham to do that, to himself and to the children of 8 days old. Suppose 8,000 years ago, and then there was no way of, anesthetizing, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. There were no, way of like cleaning the wounds and stuff, and there were no, surgical precision, tools. And how was, Abraham supposed to do that? Exactly. So that's it. That's very. That's the beginning. I mean, logically thinking about it, that's a stupid thing to do.
Yeah, logically thinking, it doesn't even make
Yes.
sense. I mean, God
Exactly.
made us how He made us, so
Exactly. Why should he do that? Exactly. So this is the beginning of it. This is the beginning of the rabbit hole. And then when you start looking at all the literature, then you will, I mean, naturally and logically, you would come to this conclusion that this is a
Right.
satanic practice. And worse than that is that, I mean, there are many satanic practices out there, But then the thing is that saying that God has ordered,
That's the issue.
Abraham to do that, that's attributing lies to God and fabricating lies and attributing them to God. And we have several verses in the Quran that state that who's more wicked than a person who fabricates and lies and attribute it to God, So
Okay.
you should
Thank you,
see
brother.
it for yourself. Yeah, mashallah, brother.
Yeah. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I wanted to say there's actually a funny movie about this. Brother Suleiman shared the clip some time ago, but if you watch it, it just it just really shows like we're just saying the stupidity of it. I mean, how does this thing make you righteous? And it makes no sense as it being a covenant. And then I mean, if it was so important too, God didn't, stated. I mean, even he didn't leave anything out the Quran. So if it was such a big deal and so important, it would have been mentioned. And we know we have the truth, like which removes all doubt, the miracle of 19. So man, we only use the Quran for the religious source of guidance. MashaAllah.
And there is another, iron law in Quran, which is in Arabic, "Inna Allah la ya'muru bil fahsha," meaning that God does not order vice. So if we say that, God has ordered Abraham to do this for himself and for, children, would be attributing vice to God, which is another fabrications of lies and attributing to God.
That's a good point.
So you're breaking a lot of rules, and I suggest watching the videos. I just see that in the chat, brother Abdullah and brother Suleiman are sharing links for the videos on the YouTube on God Alone TV. You just need to watch them, think about them, and then you would come to this reasoning for yourself that this is a satanic practice and not one of those satanic practices out there which is like can be refuted easily. This has a root in Judaism, and it has been tampered with in Old Testament. And even in Old Testament, when you read it, the context for it, you see that it is absolutely out of context. And why would God in the middle of we have context in literature, right? So when you have a story, there should be context for something. And then all of a sudden, we have the story of Abraham, and like this idea of circumcision comes up out of nowhere. What would that happen? God willing, you would be able to, inshallah, come to your own conclusions.
I mean, yes, inshallah. And those are all good points that you even just brought up, just on the, just the level of the foundation, just basic things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, mashallah.
Yeah, I mean, permanently disfiguring a human being, and doing it in the name of God, attributing a lie to God, and innovating. All these things are satanic. I mean, even something as harmless as doing a sixth prayer, for example, right, is satanic, right? If I tell you, God says do 5 prayers, and I tell you do another prayer, add a sixth prayer, seemingly it may even seem harmless, not even harmless, but righteous. That okay, well, you're doing another prayer. You just added a new prayer. It's so nice. I mean, you can remember God 6 times instead of 5 times now, and do another prayer. So that will grow your soul. But in reality, it wouldn't, because that would be idol worship. Because God told you to do 5, so then there's another God besides God who's telling you to do this, right? So that in itself, first of all, makes it wrong. And then God says to us in the Quran that He has given us this book. It's complete, perfect, and fully detailed. All the practices of our submission are detailed in the Quran, as Brother Masood also just shared. So those details are mentioned in the Quran, and so we see that Quran must be our one and only source of religious guidance. So if you go to another source, you're also doing idol worship. And so the only source that these people go to, I mean, they hide behind several reasonings, but primarily the so-called submitters that are practicing it are going based off of the Bible and we know 90% of the Bible is the truth and 10% of it is nonsense. And so if you look in the Bible, it's very clear that the covenant of Abraham is distorted. The real covenant of Abraham is mentioned in the Quran and has nothing to do with circumcision. And God, tells us what practices were given to Abraham, detailed in the Quran. So we're to follow what God says in this book and is confirmed to us. And also, if you look at it from a medical perspective, or even ethical perspective, taking someone from a person permanently a part of their body against their will, gives anybody no right. I mean, even people who say they're doing it for, because it's good for them, quote unquote, which all is bogus. They did bogus studies to just promote it, and so it is scientifically proven to be harmful. It disfigures a person. God says He created man in the best design. He perfected His creation, and this is this is how the system works in others mammals and stuff, right? How God has created them, and so they change that and alters a creation of God. This is something that Satan has promised, and it quoted in the Quran that He says, I'll promise them," means covenant. I'll promise them, and I will command them to distort His creation. Right, so it can't be more clear that Satan promised God, and it's quoted saying that in the Quran, that I will command them to distort God's creation, and this is exactly how He's doing. And you can see how blindly people are hell bent on doing this. They don't care about anything else. I mean, these so-called Muslims, even just you look at them, right? I mean, they never even do one single prayer, even some of them, right? And they drink and they do all the vice there is. But the identity of a Muslim, you have to be circumcised. They must do that. So that shows us and how Satan is, so active behind it. I mean, and all the lobbying and everything that has been done, even in America, to promote that by Jews, uh, uh, so um, really, I mean, also as the part that Masood read about Abraham, God never advocates any vice, and ordering anybody who thinks that God ordered Abraham to kill his son, even that, even someone who thinks that, He said he cannot enter paradise, right? So such an evil thought about God. And so also, I mean, God says He didn't make the religion difficult for us, and and how circumcising a person is a very painful process, especially if you don't have anesthetics, and especially at the age of 99, where apparently they say Abraham did it to himself and that to his whole tribe. So it's just definitely, I mean, a made up story. And a lot of children actually die as a result of it, either directly or indirectly. I mean, if you even look at it statistically, at the mortality rates of children, a lot of children die uh, due to complications. In America alone, I think uh, like they say, like at least 10 children a day die from circumcision related complications, which is a lot, if you think about it, right? But uh, people don't care, and I mean, because for a child, you don't have to lose. I mean, for an adult person, you can lose a lot of blood and still survive, right? But for a child, you just need a little blood to you need. I mean, if the bleeding doesn't stop for a while in a child, the child can die very quickly. And it's very common, among children. Like some children will go through it, and the bleeding they doesn't stop. They're not able to stop bleeding. The child dies, or they die later. Sometimes they over when they use anesthesia, they do it over, and then they die as a result of that. And then also there's obviously the PTSD part of it. That they go through that shock, and it disrupts the whole bonding process and everything. You know, I mean, it's a very painful process for anyone, you know, to go through. And so, from any angle you look at it, I mean, even if you say like, okay, you know, I don't like it, right, and you want to do it, I mean, uh, just think about it from a common sense perspective, like, um, you know, I mean, can you like I mean, how would your child feel, let's say, if you don't like their nose and you give them a nose job when they're young, you know, and they grow up like, why did you do that? I didn't want it. You know, it's my body, right? And people are doing it to kids without their consent. You know, so ethically, it's wrong, and then people are doing it because they're saying it will prevent things like AIDS, which scientifically makes no sense. I mean, you can, if you go and have you know unprotected sex with someone who has HIV, I mean, whether you're circumcised or not, most likely you're gonna, you know, get infected. And so, why would you even think about doing things like that, right? I mean, God has given us the righteous way of, you know, being married and doing that, and then also just cutting off, you know, preemptively part of your body. Like, for example, it's like, you know, someone thinks that they might get lung cancer or something in the future, so they just go and they can they just go and, you know, take one of their lungs out, or kidneys, or breasts for women, you know, things like that. I mean, can you just, and then you say it's benefit, it will benefit me because I don't have it, you know? I mean, how is that a benefit? You know, you lost part of your body, which is very functional and has, God made everything for a reason. And then you say, well, this is a benefit because now I don't get those diseases, but you don't have the organs anymore either, you know, that are made for a purpose. So, I mean, that's just a summary, but mashallah, I mean, there are videos and you can watch them also, God willing. But most of it, I mean, mashallah, it's common sense, right? And you only Satan hypnotizes people that they're not able to see these clear things. The main thing is, you know, our principle, as the messenger says, is the Quran, the whole Quran and nothing but the Quran. You know, if it's not in the Quran, whether it's right or wrong, we don't care. We don't follow it. You know, end of the discussion. You know.
MashaAllah, brother. And there's one more thing. I mean, there is a part in Old Testament in Exodus chapter 4, verses 24 to 26, if I'm not mistaken, that there was one situation that it was mentioned that Moses failed to circumcise his son, and then the wife of Moses took action and, you know, circumcised his son so that the anger of God would not be on Moses anymore. So, so think about it, you know, Moses was supposed to just go and talk to Pharaoh, and that was his job. And then we have it in Quran, mashallah, completely detailed. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you know, in that context that we are talking about, that God ordered Moses and Aaron to go to Pharaoh, we see that God was angry with Moses. Again, I have to say that this is a lie that is attributed to God. And then God is angry with Moses, and because he did not circumcise his son, you know. So you just see how tampering has happened with the Old Testament, and these little bits and pieces of, you know, circumcision when it was about Abraham, and what we see here about Moses. You see how Satan is tampering out of context with the idea that he wants to instill in the minds of the people, namely circumcision, which is a satanic practice.
Yeah, I shared that clip again from year one in the chat. If
Yeah, mashallah, mashallah.
that's old.
Yeah. And again, like, for example, something similar to, you know, ordering of God, you know, God ordering Abraham to, you know, do the circumcision, which is a lie, and we know that. The same goes for the idea that whether it was Ishmael or it was Isaac, you know, and Messenger of the Covenant has a whole Muslim perspective on this, that you can read and see how they have tampered with it. And when they wanted to tamper with it, they didn't even cover their tracks.
Like simply you see things are out of place and it doesn't make sense. And subhanallah and alhamdulillah, praise be to God that we have the exact wording of God in Quran, and we know that this is the truth based on the mathematical miracle, and we can trust it. And based on Quran, you can judge other stuff. You can simply see that how things are out of place and what was the reality of the matter happened, and what tamperings and fabrications and how innovations have crept into the religion of God.
Yeah, mashallah, brother. And I can say that one of their so-called powerful arguments is that the messenger of the covenant didn't prohibit the circumcision thing. And when we look at this, it's to me, it's a stupid argument because um, if he had to prohibit the things, you know, if he had to say the things is not in the Islam, his whole mission would be just sitting and saying that this is not in Islam, this is not in Islam. You know, there are many innovations, and he doesn't have to say that you shouldn't do this. Like, he gave us the basic principle, the whole Quran and nothing but the Quran, and we should follow this principle.
Which is a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah, brother. Yeah.
I mean, you know, the thing is, in like when they say that, you know, a counter argument would be, okay, well, in Egypt, 81% of the women over the age of 21 are circumcised, right? And they are attributed to religion also. In Egypt, his home country, he didn't mention that female circumcision is wrong. Okay, so does that mean that you can do female circumcision also? But then they'll say, no, you can't do female circumcision. You know?
And there are many other satanic and stupid practices going on in the world in all the religions. Did Messenger of the Covenant have time to talk about each and every one of them?
Mm-hmm.
So God has given us brain and logic, you know.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
He said, don't follow anything other than the Quran if it's not in the Quran. But so you can't put it on the messenger. You know, this shows, this to me is, you know, the verse where God says they actually blame God, you know. Had God willed, they say we would not have practiced idol worship. So they blame it on God. Oh, the messenger didn't prohibit it. So if God wanted to prohibit it, he would tell the messenger. So to stop us, right? So again, they're blaming God, right? But I mean, of course, he said all hadith and sunnah are satanic innovations. In many of the countries, at least in India and Pakistan, which is a big number of people, you know, the name for even circumcision is sunnah, right? And in the Sunni world, um, you know, we know anything that is considered optional, non-obligatory, is called the sunnah, is a sunnah, right? Which if you do, it's like extra credit, like growing a beard, you know. And so
and putting henna on the beard.
yeah, I put henna on the beard.
MashaAllah.
So I mean, anything that is that the traditional Muslims, you know, they consider optional, so it's called a sunnah. So it was a sunnah, you know, of Abraham, they call it, right? So I mean, the messenger, his whole life, he kept telling people that hadith and sunnah satanic innovation, hadith and sunnah satanic innovations, but they're still following that, right? So for at least for the so-called Muslims that are following it, they're following it, attributing it to all the hadiths about circumcision, right? And then now we have these people among submitters who are trying to defend it using the Bible, right? But either way, I mean, their argument is shot down, also by the messenger himself. You know, well, they refer to the covenant of Abraham. There's an audio Quran study where where one of the ladies from a Christian background asked him about the covenant of Abraham, and he says Abraham made a covenant, like pointing to one single covenant. He said he made a covenant with God, and he said that covenant is mentioned in the appendix. And if you go down to the appendix, there's one verse that is about the covenant of Abraham, and if you read it, that's talking about purifying the Kaaba and stuff, and has nothing to do with circumcision. So clearly, I mean, when the people, they removed, as they removed all the practice of Abraham, they replaced it with circumcision as his covenant. And I mean, that would be also, if they attribute to Abraham, like that would be the only practice that was given to Abraham, but was being practiced before him, because it's been there, being practiced like historically by other nations and, other tribes and other people, so. And I mean, from any angle you look at it, right? I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of, God says there's no compulsion in religion, right? So you're imposing your personal beliefs, your religious belief on a child. If the child wants to be, let's say, an atheist or whatever, you already did something to him, permanently disfigured his body, that he didn't want any part of it, right? So you impose your religion on the child against his will. I mean, from that angle, if you see also, that is wrong, right? And then how is it gonna grow? Whose soul is it gonna grow? Is it gonna grow the father's soul or the mother's soul or the child's soul? Like, I mean, what kind of practice is that? That is not even done by the child. It's done by the doctor, and the child doesn't even know about it. He has no choice. So it's just stupid from any. You see it.
And also, when we think about it, I came across that the circumcisionists violate God's law. They don't keep the chastity. They show the private areas of child to the others,
Mm-hmm.
apart from the diseases.
Mm-hmm.
They violate this chastity.
Yeah, and then for some children, I mean, they do it. I think some people have interesting stories about that. They do it in front of other people, and the child. I mean, a lot of times, the children are grown up, and they're conscious, and I mean, it's a very, very embarrassing. It's traumatizing, right? And they do it as a ceremony, like publicly. Yeah. So I think the emotional trauma, from along with the physical, I think is something, right?
My cousin in Iran was circumcised when he was 15 years old.
Well,
Just think
yeah.
about it. The guy
Yeah.
is still traumatized.
Yeah, anyone else wants to share their own story, personal story, please welcome.
Yeah, even the most of the boy in my country, Bangladesh, they still circumcised like age of like 10, 8. Even I was circumcised. I think I was in 10, at 10 or I think 12, like that. Yeah. So yeah, experience is so bad. It is, yeah. And whatever argument you give them, the who believe in circumcision, just when they call them submitter, it's very hard to remove
Mm-hmm.
this idea from their heart. It's
Mm-hmm.
like as likes to become a submitter from the traditional Muslim or traditional Christian. It's so hard. And the same thing, when they say they are submitter, but they believe these things, and whatever your argument, whatever logic you give them, it's very hard to to remove from this idea from their heart.
Mm-hmm.
This is the things, it's not easy. What you see, hundreds of argument, hundreds of logic you give them, still they stick this idea. I was speaking with one submitter that like a couple of months before, So and I was sharing with the submitter, in my experience, I told, the submitter, even in my life experience, I saw one of my second cousin, died because of this circumcision. Still I remember that incident. The my cousin was, I think, the same, like 12 years to 13 years old, like that. So
Oh,
because of this issue, the complication of the circumcision, so he died. And I saw him when he was dying. I still remember that incident.
oh
So
my
I
God.
was sharing with this idea, the submitter, and the submitter said, so what? He went to the lower heaven. See, oh my God, this is their understanding. She said,
Yeah.
oh, so what? He went to lower heaven. It's good for him. See,
Oh
this
wow.
is, oh
Just
my
send
God.
everybody to heaven then.
Yeah, yeah. So kill,
Kill
so
people
kill,
all
kill
over the
all
world
the
and
all
just
the boy. So this is their understanding. Oh my God.
yeah.
And even if you want to think about their crooked way, their satanic way, what is mentioned in the Bible, in the Old Testament, is any boy, any male born boy of 8 days old. I don't know why would these people even not follow what they
Mm-hmm.
believe as a satanic practice. They just do it anytime they want to do it. They're not like these
Mm-hmm.
cannibal tribes of Amazon. They just want to this figure, children, and be done with it because they enjoy the people suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Huda's brothers almost died. One of them, I think, because of the excessive bleeding. He barely survived. All right. So, does anyone else have any comments or questions? All right. If not, God willing, we can conclude the study. So, thank you all for joining. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, brother Salami.
Assalamu
Thank
alaikum.
you all.
Thank you.
Assalamu
Salam.
alaikum.
Bless you all.
Assalamu alaikum,
God
everyone.
bless you all. Salam
Salam.
alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Brother Salami, for leading. So,
MashaAllah.
thanks you too.
Mashallah.